I was, I think, immediately struck, as I often am when I read Shakespeare plays, struck by how relevant it felt and how actually very modern it felt. I think particularly in terms of the kind of issues that are raised in the story seem as relevant today in 2014 as they were 400 years ago. And that's very exciting, especially when you're thinking about sort of presenting the play on the stage to a modern audience. It's exciting to know that there are issues being raised which people may be able to connect to now. Obviously, questions of racism, obviously within the play, and senses, the whole kind of idea of characters feeling isolated. We can all, I think, relate to that to some degree, as well as stories, for example, of Jessica running away from her father, running away from one's parents for love. Not to mention questions of debt, which is obviously a subject which nowadays we're all very familiar with. When I'm thinking about directing a play for young people, the first thing I do is think, well, what was it like? When I was 14 years old, what kind of things engaged me at the theatre? What kept my interest? What was I interested in? And actually, to be honest with you, things haven't really changed much. Over the years, the same things, I think when I was 14, which interested me then, interested me now. If the first thing, of course, the most important thing is, do I understand what I'm watching? And so clarity is very, very important. And I think that there are moments in some of these plays where I read and I go, well, maybe this language is very, very obscure, or this joke is very, very particular to 400 years ago, is maybe lost over the years. So maybe that's probably worth going. So you start very simply. What do I really understand? What's really, really obscure? Which, with every kind of help available to me, isn't necessarily going to come across, perhaps. Those sort of things go first. The thing I would say is, I met a group of young people not long ago who knew the play a little bit, and I said to them, what do you think I need to think about when I'm putting on this play? And one student put up her hand and said, well, you need to make sure the actors know what they're saying. You need to make sure the actors understand what they're saying. Well, do you know what? I thought that was a really good bit of advice, because of course the thing about some of this language, which can be an obstacle for everybody, whether you're a director, an actor, or an audience member, it can be a challenge. And sometimes I think that, sometimes we go to theatre and watch Shakespeare, and maybe we don't absolutely understand every single word, but because the actor on stage does, and so knows why they're saying what they're saying to another character on stage, because they know what they're saying, we kind of get a general sense of it. So I thought that piece of advice that student gave me was really, really useful. And so, of course, in rehearsal, a lot of rehearsal is about unpicking what a scene means and what a character is saying, so we know exactly what it is that they're saying to the other person. Setting a play in sort of modern dress can be helpful, but it can also, you don't want it to become a hindrance, because I think the trouble with, the potential problems with setting a play written 400 years ago in a more modern context is that, obviously, for example, technology has moved on. And in this play, there's a lot of letter delivery, and something which we may not be so used to doing these days. If you want to get a message to somebody, you've got to, you'd send a text, wouldn't you? Or you'd, go on a social networking site and communicate that way. And I suppose if you get hung up by those sort of things, then suddenly we're going to need a massive screen to see a Facebook conversation going on or whatever. And, there's nothing to stop you doing that. But at the Globe, it's going to be quite difficult because of the fact that you're outdoors and all those sort of things. So if you try and be very faithful to a 2014 setting when you're doing a play like this, I think you could end up with difficulty and trying to be too authentic. So When I say we've set this in modern dress, we've created a world which has a sort of has a sort of modern look to it. We've sort of made up this world in a way that sort of Shakespeare does too. He says this is Venice, but there's nothing to say that he's actually been to Venice and knows that this is exactly representing a world, you know, in Italy. And in the same way that, you know, when I say that we've set it in modern dress, we're not saying it's 2014. It just, there's a look to it which has a feel to something which is a bit more modern. I did think at one point that we might do it in a period dress, do a period production, and you know, we might well have gone down that route, except for the fact that we got excited by the fact that there are, you know, that some of these issues, some of the subjects in the play feel very contemporary. And I suppose in an hour and a half, which is what we've got to tell the story in, I wanted to have as many hooks and as many visual references which helped us understand the story in an hour and a half as possible. And I think that setting it in a more modern environment probably helps with that. The thing that the Globe allows you to do when you're telling a story on that stage, the thing that it allows you to do, which a lot of other theatres don't, is to involve the audience, to make the audience feel like they're part of the action. And that's because the simple fact is there's no roof. So one light lights everybody. There's not a sense of us in the auditorium with the lights out and then the actors on stage with the lights on, so therefore we're in the dark and the actors are in the light. We're in a shared light. We can all see each other. So as an actor, if you're an actor on stage, you can't run away from the fact that you can see the audience. There's no black void and sounds of audience laughing or reacting to the action. You can see everybody. So you have to embrace that. And so by doing that, you bring the audience in. And what's so lovely about that in a play like this is that, you know, in all these communal spaces like the Rialto or, you know, just in the streets of Venice, you are surrounded by the citizens of Venice all around you. You bring everybody in, so you talk to them, you mention them. And that's fantastic, that's really exciting. It's like the audience are another member of the company of actors on stage. And we're hopefully going to be bringing the audience into the storytelling a lot more than they might be expecting it. And, you know, for example, scenes like the choosing the caskets, were the fantastic scenes where Morocco, the Prince of Morocco, Aragon and Bassanio choosing the caskets. When they're working out which one to choose, it's not a conversation to themselves, they're sharing it with the audience, almost asking the audience to help them out. And what's really wonderful about that idea in terms of the casket scene is by the time we get to Bassanio, the audience are pretty much going to know which is the casket to choose. So they're privileged to information which Bassanio doesn't have. So when Bassanio's trying to find which one to choose, I mean, I'm hoping that the audience might be able to help him out with that a little bit, and you know, we'll see if they do.